The scent of roasted chicken and my mother's rosemary potatoes usually meant comfort. It was the smell of Sunday dinners, of lazy afternoons, and easy conversation. But that night, a strange tension coiled in the air, thick and suffocating, like humidity before a storm. I was 18, and my life was a meticulously drawn blueprint. Top of my class, captain of the debate team, and an early acceptance letter to my dream university clutched in my hand like a golden ticket. The deposit was paid, the dorm assignment was secured, and my college fund, a nest egg my parents had spoken of since I was in pigtails, was waiting to hatch. My future felt solid, inevitable. My brother, Liam, sat across from me. He was 2 years older, and where I was structured, he was chaotic brilliance. He had 1,000 ideas a minute, flitting from one to the next like a hummingbird. He'd dropped out of college after a year, declaring it a waste of time for a visionary. Tonight, he had a manic gleam in his eyes that made the fine hairs on my arms stand up. "Alara, honey," my father started, clearing his throat. He shifted his weight in his chair, the old wood groaning in protest. He wouldn't meet my eyes, instead focusing on a spot on the tablecloth just past my shoulder. That was the first alarm bell. "Danger. We have something to discuss with you," my mother added, her voice unnaturally bright. She reached across the table and patted Liam's hand. "Liam has the most incredible opportunity." I smiled, a genuine, supportive smile. "Oh yeah, what is it this time?" I was used to Liam's opportunities. The gourmet dog biscuit delivery service, the app that translated baby cries, the plan to monetize sea gazing. Liam leaned forward, his hand splayed on the table. "It's called Innovatech L. We're going to revolutionize data-driven advertising for small businesses. It's a game changer, a multi-million-dollar idea. All I need is the seed capital." "That's wonderful, Liam," I said. "But where are you going to get that kind of money?" This was it. The moment the floorboards of my life gave way, my father finally looked at me, his eyes full of a pained sort of apology that did nothing to soften the blow. "We're giving it to him," he said quietly. I blinked. "Giving it to him? What do you mean? Your savings?" My mother shook her head, hair smile unwavering, plastered on. "No, sweetheart. It's a family investment. We're giving him your college fund." The words hung in the air, each one a separate stone dropping into a silent pool. College fund. My college fund. The one earmarked for my tuition, my books, my future. The one they'd promised me. I felt a laugh bubble up in my chest, a hysterical, disbelieving sound. "That's a good one. You're kidding, right?" But their faces told me it wasn't a joke. My father's pained resignation. My mother's desperate optimism. Liam's entitled excitement. He genuinely saw nothing wrong with this. "Honey, listen," my mother pleaded, leaning forward. "A university degree is one thing, but this is a chance to build a legacy for the whole family. Liam's success will be your success too. My success." I whispered, the words feeling like sandpaper in my throat. My success was supposed to be at Georgetown. My success was supposed to be in a lecture hall, not handed over to him for some startup idea. My voice rose, gaining a sharp, frantic edge. "That's my money. You told me that was my money for my education." "It's not an argument, Alara," my father said, his voice firming up, shutting down. "The decision has been made. Liam needs this now. You can go to community college for a couple of years, work a little. It'll build character. Build character." The condescension in those words set my blood on fire. They weren't just taking my money. They were dismissing my dreams as trivial, as secondary to Liam's latest whim. I looked at my brother, my golden boy brother, who was nodding along seriously as if this were the most logical thing in the world. He was getting his dream, funded by the wreckage of mine. You can't do this, I sighed, my voice trembling with a rage so profound it felt like it would split me in two. It's already done, my father said, and his finality was like a slap. We transferred the funds this afternoon. I stared at them, the three people who were supposed to be my anchor, my safe harbor. In that moment, they were strangers. They had taken my future, the one I had worked for, bled for, and sacrificed for, and they had handed it to him on a silver platter without a second thought. They hadn't even asked me. I stood up so fast my chair screeched against the floor. I didn't shout. I didn't cry. A cold, terrifying calm washed over me. I looked at my father's weak apology, my mother's delusional smile, and my brother's greedy ambition. I saw them for who they were. I see, aside, my voice devoid of all emotion. A family investment? I walked out of the dining room, slashed up the stairs to my bedroom, and packed a single bag. I didn't take the trophies or the debate medals. I didn't take the framed pictures of our smiling family. They were all props from a life that had just been revealed as a lie. As I walked out the front door into the cool night air, I didn't look back. They had made their investment, and I made a silent vow to myself, a promise whispered into the darkness. Someday, somehow, I would collect the debt. The next few years were a blur of fluorescent lights and the smell of stale coffee. The dream of Georgetown dissolved into the harsh reality of Northwood Community College. My days were spent in underfunded classrooms, and my nights were a frantic juggling act. I was a waitress at a greasy spoon diner from 5p.m. to midnight, my clothes perpetually smelling of fried onions. Then I'd go home to my tiny shared apartment and do freelance data entry until my eyes burned. Sleep was a luxury I couldn't afford. Every dollar I earned felt like a small victory, a tiny piece of myself I was clawing back. I lived on instant noodles and cheap bread. I bought my textbooks used and my clothes from thrift stores. Every sacrifice was a stone I laid in the foundation of my new life, a life built on grit and spite. Meanwhile, filtered through my parents' gushing phone calls, which I only answered out of a grim sense of obligation, I heard about Liam's meteoric rise. Innovatech, fueled by my college fund, was a success. They got a splashy feature in a tech magazine. Liam was the young/charismatic CEO, the visionary, in a hoodie. My parents would talk about his new office, his fancy car, the articles calling him the next big thing. Isn't it wonderful, Alara? My mother would chirp. We're so proud. This is what we meant by a family investment. When the company goes public, we'll all be set for life. I would murmur something noncommittal, my knuckles white as I gripped the phone. Set for life. I was scrubbing dried ketchup off tables to pay for a textbook on corporate finance. The irony was so bitter it could curdle milk. They saw his success as their own, as my own, completely oblivious to the fact that I was the price of that success. The community college years were brutal, but they sharpened me. I transferred to a state university, taking night classes so I could keep working my two jobs. I majored in finance and minored in corporate law. Every lecture on leverage buyouts, every case study on hostile takeovers, I devoured. They weren't just academic subjects for me. They were a potential arsenal. I graduated summa cum laude, a fact my parents barely acknowledged. Too busy planning a trip to see Liam's new condo in the city, I didn't go to my own graduation ceremony. I worked a double shift instead. My first real job was at a boutique investment firm known for its aggressive tactics. It was a Shark Tank, and I thrived. The relentless hours felt normal to me. The high-stakes pressure was a relief. I learned how to dissect a company's balance sheet, how to find the hidden weaknesses, the over-leveraged assets, the nervous investors. I was good at it. I was scary good. My colleagues saw me as a machine, an emotionless analyst who was all business. They didn't know that my work was fueled by the ghost of a girl who had her dreams stolen at the dinner table. I saved my money with a zealot's devotion. While my coworkers bought expensive suits and went on lavish vacations, I lived in a small apartment on the outskirts of the city and drove a 10-year-old car. My bank account grew steadily, silently. I took the elevator to the top floor / the executive suites. When I stepped out, the receptionist looked up, a little confused. "May I help you?" she asked. "I'm here for the board meeting," I said. "Representing Northwood?" "Acquisitions." Her eyes widened. She stammered something into her phone. A moment later, the CFO himself, a harried-looking man named George, hurried out to greet me. "You're from Northwood?" he asked, wiping a sheen of sweat from his brow. "We weren't expecting. We thought you'd be calling. And I believe in handling important matters in person," I said, walking past him toward the boardroom. I entered the room. Liam was at the head of the table, looking stressed but trying to project an aura of control. The other 3 board members were already seated. When Liam saw me, his face went through a rapid series of expressions, confusion / irritation, and then a dawning, horrified recognition. "Elara?" He breathed, his voice a mix of shock and disbelief. "What the hell are you doing?" "Here." I placed my leather briefcase on the polished table and took the empty seat, Marcus Thorne's old seat. I looked directly at my brother, my expression a perfect blank slate. "Good morning, Liam," aside, my voice echoing slightly in the silent room. "I'm here to protect my investment." The color drained from Liam's face. He stared at me, his mouth slightly agape, the dots connecting in his head with agonizing slowness. "Northwood Acquisitions, Marcus Thorne's shares." The sudden dead call. "Me? You're Northwood?" He stammered, looking around at the other board members for support, but they were just watching the drama unfold / their faces a mixture of confusion and intrigue. I said calmly. I opened my briefcase and took out a stack of folders, sliding one to each board member. "And I am formally calling this meeting to order." Liam was sputtering, trying to regain control. "This is ridiculous. This is some kind of joke." "She can't just—" "I can," I interrupted, my voice cutting through his panic like a shard of glass. "I am the representative for the single largest shareholder in this company. I also represent one of its largest creditors. According to the bylaws, that gives me the right to set the agenda." I paused, letting the weight of my words sink in. I had them. I had him. "The first item on that agenda," I continued, my gaze fixed on my brother, "is a vote of no confidence in the current chief executive officer." A collective gasp went through the room. Liam looked like I had physically struck him. "No confidence? Are you insane? I built this company." "You built it on a foundation of reckless debt and irresponsible spending," I countered, my voice never rising. I gestured to the folders in front of the board members. "Inside, you will find a full breakdown of Innovatech's financials. Not the version presented in the glossy annual reports, but the reality. You will see the burn rate, the unsustainable debt-to-equity ratio, and a projection model showing insolvency within 6 months if the Sphere project proceeds." For the next hour I systematically and dispassionately dismantled my brother's legacy. I used his own numbers against him. I pointed out every flawed projection, every vanity expense, every corner he had cut. I spoke the language of the boardroom, EBITDA, cash flow, shareholder value, a language he only pretended to understand. I wasn't his little sister anymore. I was a force of nature he had unwittingly created. The other board members, seasoned investors, and business people listened intently. They were sharks smelling blood in the water. Their loyalty wasn't to Liam, it was to their money. I was showing them not only that their investment was in jeopardy, but that I was the only one in the room with a clear plan to save it. The Sphere project is canceled, effective immediately, I stated. We will restructure the existing debt, which my firm is prepared to facilitate. We will streamline operations, cut redundant departments, and focus on our profitable core business. We will make this company lean, efficient, and for the first time in 3 years, profitable. Liam tried to fight back, his arguments growing more emotional and desperate. He talked about vision, about innovation, about changing the world. I countered with profit and loss statements. In a boardroom, passion is no match for a spreadsheet. Finally, I called the question. All in favor of the motion of no confidence in the CEO, Liam Foster? My hand went up immediately. After a moment's hesitation, one of the other board members, a stern woman named Helen, raised her hand, then the third, and the fourth. It was unanimous. Liam sat there, stunned into silence, a king dethroned in his own castle. The motion carries, I announced into the quiet room. Effective immediately, Liam Foster is removed as CEO of Innovatech. The board will appoint an interim CEO to oversee the restructuring. I paused. I nominate myself for that position. There was no argument. There was no debate. It was the only logical next step. They voted again. Again, it was unanimous. In the space of 2 hours, I had taken everything from him. The final act had to be performed in his office, the corner office with its panoramic views of the city. The office that my college fund had paid for. I had the board meeting minutes typed up and signed before. I sent a message to his assistant. Please ask Mr. Foster to come to the CEO's office at his earliest convenience. He kept me waiting for 20 minutes, a final petty act of defiance. When he finally walked in, his face was a mask of cold fury. He didn't sit. He stood in the middle of the expensive rug, his hands clenched into fists. I was sitting behind his desk, my desk now. It felt perfectly natural. What do you want, Alara? He spat. I'm formalizing your termination. I sighed, pushing a single document across the polished wood surface. It's your severance agreement. It's the standard package as stipulated in your contract. 3 months' salary, nothing more. He laughed, a hair's ugly sound. You think you can just fire me? From my own company? After everything I've done? It's not your company anymore, Liam, I said, my voice soft. The board has made its decision. I have made my decision. Your leadership has been a liability. Your employment here is officially terminated. He strode to the desk, slamming his hands down on it. This is about the money slash, isn't it? The college fund. This is all some sick, twisted revenge because mom and dad gave me a leg up. Gave you a leg up? I repeated the calmness in my voice finally cracking, revealing the white-hot core of rage beneath. You didn't get a leg up, Liam. You got a launch pad. One that was built on my back. While you were being featured in magazines I was working 2 jobs to pay for night school. While you were buying a condo, I was eating instant noodles so I could save enough money to claw my way into a world that you were just handed. I stood up, walking around the desk to face him. We were inches apart. I could see the confusion in his eyes. He truly didn't get it. He never had. You and mom and dad, you talked about a family investment. I said, my voice low and dangerous. You were right. It was an investment. My suffering was the capital. My sacrifice was the seed money. And today, your company is the return. My return. He was speechless, his anger deflating into a pathetic sort of despair. You're my sister, he whispered. And you're my brother, I shot back. Did you remember that when you cashed the check that was supposed to pay for my education? Did you think about your sister then? I walked back behind the desk / the seat of power. This isn't about family, Liam, you taught me. That. You wanted to be a businessman / a visionary playing in the big leagues. Well, / welcome to the big leagues. Sometimes you lose. Now, please clear out your personal effects. Security will escort you out. He stared at me for a long moment, his eyes filled with a hatred so pure it was almost beautiful. He didn't say another word. He just turned and walked out of the office, a ghost in his own life. Liam and I barely spoke. We saw each other at Christmas, the interactions stilted and awkward. He'd talk about scaling and server capacity and Series B funding. I'd ask him about his debt-to-equity ratio. He'd laugh it off, telling me not to worry my little analyst head about it. He saw me as the book-smart sister who played with spreadsheets. He, the visionary, built empires. He had no idea the game I was really playing. 5 years after that, fateful dinner, Liam's Innovatech was the darling of the small tech world. It was valued, on paper, at over $50 million. He was arrogant, successful, and sloppy. I knew this because I read every financial statement, every industry report, every scrap of information I could find about his company. He expanded too quickly, took on too much debt to fuel the growth, and made promises to his investors he couldn't keep. His focus was on image, on the next flashy product launch, not on the crumbling foundation beneath his feet. And that was where I would strike. I had spent 8 years in the shadows, sharpening my claws. 8 years of scrimping, sieving, and studying my prey. I was no longer the heartbroken girl who had her future ripped away. I was a predator. And my brother's shiny, celebrated company was my target. The first move was silent, invisible. I quit my job at the investment firm, cashing out my significant bonuses. Combined with my fanatical savings, I had a formidable war chest. It wasn't enough to buy his company outright, not yet, but it was enough to start pulling the threads. I established a shell corporation, a blandly named holding. Company called Northwood Acquisitions. The name was a private joke, a nod to the community college that had been my crucible. Through Northwood, I began my assault. Liam's company, Innovatech, was fueled by debt. I knew this. From their public filings, he had taken out a series of large loans from a syndicate of mid-tier banks to finance his aggressive expansion. That debt was my entry point. Debt can be bought and sold like any other asset. I started with the smallest piece of it, a loan from a regional bank that was looking to offload some of its riskier corporate holdings. It cost me nearly $1 million, but when the transaction was complete, I owned a piece of my brother's ambition. He owed me money now, though he had no idea. The feeling was intoxicating, a cold, clean thrill. This wasn't about passion or vision. This was about numbers. The language he had never bothered to properly learn. Over the next 18 months I became a ghost in the financial markets. I used brokers and intermediaries, my name never appearing on any document connected to Innovatech. Northwood Acquisitions slowly and quietly bought up more of Innovatech's debt. I found another bank nervous about a downturn in the tech sector and bought their share. I bought another piece from a credit fund. Soon, I was one of Liam's largest creditors. My parents would call gushing about Liam. He's working on a new app. It's going to be even bigger, my mother would say. Is his cash flow positive yet? I'd ask flatly. Oh, Elara, you're so practical. You have to spend money to make money. She'd trail back, parroting a line I was sure Liam had. Fed her. They were so blind, so caught up in the myth of their golden son. They never asked about my life per my work. To them, I was still just the responsible, boring daughter who had a job in an office. The irony was a constant low hum in the back of my mind. The family investment was indeed about to pay off, just not in the way they imagined. The next step was to acquire equity. Debt gave me leverage, but equity gave me control. I researched Innovatech's early investors. I found one, a man named Marcus Thorne, who had put in a significant amount of money in the first seed round. I dug into him. Thorne was overextended elsewhere, his personal portfolio hit hard by a real estate collapse. He needed liquidity. He was also, according to my sources, deeply annoyed with Liam's arrogance and cavalier attitude toward spending. He was the weak point. I arranged a meeting. Not as Alara, his sister, but as a representative of Northwood Acquisitions. I flew to Chicago and met him in a sterile boardroom. I wore a severe dark gray suit, my hair pulled back so tightly it hurt. I was the picture of cold corporate efficiency. Soren was a man in his 60s, with tired eyes and a forced smile. He expected a negotiation, a back and forth. I didn't give him one. Mr. Thorne, it began, my voice even and calm. My firm has a significant holding in Innovatech's debt structure. We believe the company is fundamentally sound, but poorly managed. Current leadership is over-leveraged and focused on vanity metrics over profitability. I slid a folder across the table. This is our offer for your entire stake in the company. It's 20% above current market valuation. It's a clean exit for you / all cash wired within 24 hours. He opened the folder, his eyes widening slightly at the number. It was a generous offer, an escape hack she desperately needed. Who is Northwood Acquisitions? He asked, looking at me with new curiosity. I've never heard. Of you, we prefer a low profile, I said. We believe in results, not press releases. He was silent for a long moment, studying my face. I held his gaze, per my expression unreadable. There wasn't a flicker of fear or doubt in me. I had been preparing for this my entire adult life. He's my godson, Thorne said quietly, referring to Liam. I've known the boy since he was in diapers. This isn't personal, Mr. Thorne, I replied, my voice like ice. It's just business. The phrase felt good in my mouth. It was the same hollow justification the world had given me for years. Now I was wielding it as a weapon. He signed the papers. With that signature, I became the largest single shareholder in my brother's company. I controlled a massive block of his debt and a significant portion of his equity. He was still the CEO, the face of the brand, but his throne was standing on a trapdoor, and my hand was on the lever. He just didn't know it yet. The final stage required a catalyst, a reason to make my move. Liam, in his infinite arrogance, provided it himself. He announced a major new initiative, Innovatech Spear, a wildly expensive and unnecessary expansion into virtual reality hardware. It was a vanity project of the highest order. The market was skeptical. The company's stock dipped, and his remaining investors grew anxious. The Sphere would require a massive new capital injection further diluting their shares and pushing the company deeper into the red. It was the perfect storm. I knew from the shareholder agreement, a document I had studied like a holy text, that a new round of funding this large required a full board vote. As the owner of Marcus Thorne's 20% stake I now held one of the 5 board seats. Liam had no idea who had bought Thorne's shares. The transfer was recorded under the anonymous name of Northwood Acquisitions. He likely assumed it was just another faceless investment fund. I had my legal team, the best I could afford, draft the motions. Everything was prepared with surgical precision. The day before the board meeting, I let the first tremor be felt. Northwood Acquisitions formally called in a portion of its debt, citing a clause in the loan agreement about risky ventures that jeopardized repayment. It was a shot across the bow, a financial maneuver designed to create panic. The call went to Innovatech's CFO, who I knew was already sweating bullets over the Sphere project. The news that one of their largest creditors was getting cold feet would have sent him into a tailspin. Chaos would be rippling through Innovatech's executive wing. Liam would be blindsided, furious, scrambling to figure out who Northwood Acquisitions was and why they were targeting him. The next morning, I walked into the Innovatech headquarters for the first time. The lobby was all glass and brushed steel, with a massive illuminated Innovatech logo on the wall. A monument to my stolen future. I felt nothing. No awe, no jealousy. Just the cold satisfaction of an apex predator closing in on its prey. An hour later, my parents called. Liam had obviously gone crying to them. My mother's voice was a hysterical shriek. How could you do this to your brother? To your family? She sobbed into the phone. My father got on the line, his voice booming with a rage he had never once used to defend me. You will reverse this decision right now, Elara. You will give him his company back. We are your parents. We demand it. I leaned back in the large leather chair, looking out at the city lights twinkling to life as dusk fell. I felt a profound sense of emptiness, followed by a wave of crystalline clarity. No, I said simply. What? My father sputtered. The answer is no. Air repeated, my voice like steel. You don't get to demand anything from me. Your parental rights expired the day you sold my future. You made an investment over, remember? You invested in him. It turned out to be a poor one. I, on the other hand, invested in myself, and now I'm liquidating your bad assets. I continued, my voice cold and final. Innovatech is my company now. I own it. The family investment you were so proud of, it has officially matured. Under new management, do not call me again. I hung up the phone, severing the final tie to the people who had created me and then discarded me. A silence descended on the office. It was just me, the city, and the empire I had, built on the ashes of my own heartbreak. There was no joy in the victory / no sweet satisfaction. There was only a cold, quiet sense of order restored. A debt, finally paid in full. My relationship with Maya Vance, the head of engineering, over slowly thawed. She fought me on every cut to her department, but said did it, we did it, with logic. She proved which engineers were essential, which projects had merit. She didn't respect me, not personally, but she respected my competence. And I, in turn, respected her fierce dedication to the work itself. We found a strange, unspoken alliance / two people who cared more about the integrity of the product than office politics. One night, working late over a complex coding problem, she looked at me across a table littered with empty coffee cups. You enjoy this, don't you? She asked, her tone more curious than accusatory. The problem solving. I enjoy competence, I said without looking up from the screen. I detest waste. That's not what I asked, she pressed gently. I finally looked at her. When I took over, I intended to strip this company for parts and sell the scraps. I admitted, the words tasting strange in my mouth. It was the final act of my revenge. But you didn't, she stated. No, I said quietly. I didn't. It turns out it's harder to destroy something worthwhile than I thought. Just as a sliver of light was beginning to appear at the end of the tunnel, a new threat emerged. Omnicorp, a massive tech conglomerate known for swallowing smaller companies over, made an unsolicited offer to buy Innovatech. It was a lowball offer, timed perfectly to take advantage of our perceived weakness. Their CEO, a ruthless corporate raider named Alistair Finch, saw a wounded animal and was moving in for the kill. The board was tempted. The offer represented a clean, profitable exit for them. For me, it was a huge financial windfall. It was the smart move, the logical conclusion to my hostile takeover. I could take the money, disappear to a private island, and never think about my family or Innovatech again. It was everything I thought I wanted. We gathered in the boardroom, the same room where it all began. The Omnicorp offer was the only item on the agenda. "It's a solid offer, Ilara," one of the board members said. 40% over our current valuation. We'd be fools not to take it. They all looked at me, expecting me to agree. I was the numbers cruncher, the emotionless CEO. This was the perfect deal. Take the money and run. But as I looked at the offer, I didn't feel a thrill. I felt a surge of protective fury. I thought of the late nights with Maya, the engineers who had survived the layoffs and were now writing the best code of their lives. The company that I had dragged back from the brink. Alistair Finch saw it as an asset to be stripped. I now saw it as something I had built or rebuilt. "We're not taking it," I said. The words came out before I had even consciously decided. The board stared at me in shock. "What? Ilara, be reasonable. This is a golden parachute. Finch's plan is to absorb our user base, fuel our entire engineering team, and get our technology for a few key patents." Aside, my voice ringing with a passion that surprised even myself. "He will destroy this company. Everything we have worked for over the last 6 months will be for nothing. This isn't your job to be sentimental." Another board member argued, "Your job is to maximize shareholder value. And I'm telling you this, offer does not represent our true value," I countered. I looked around the table at the men who had helped me house my brother. "You backed me once because I showed you a path to solvency. Now I'm showing you a path to real, sustainable growth. Give me 1 more year. 1 year. And I promise you a valuation that will make this offer look like an insult." It was a gamble, the biggest of my life. I was no longer fighting a war of revenge against my past. I was fighting a war of creation for the future. After a long, tense debate, they agreed, reluctantly. They gave me my year. The fight against Omnicorp was more brutal than anything I had ever faced. Alistair Finch played dirty. He planted negative stories in the press, poached key employees, and tried to sow dissent among my investors. But I was no longer the girl fighting with raw emotion. I had been forged in the fires of corporate warfare. I used his own tactics against him. I launched a new/streamlined version of our software that was a massive critical and commercial success. I highlighted Omnicorp's history of destroying the companies it acquired feeding the story to the very journalists Finch had on his payroll. I fought him not with rage, but with a cold, brilliant strategy. A year later to the day I called another board meeting. Innovatech's stock price had tripled. We were profitable, celebrated, and seen as a titan of innovation. Omnicorp had long since slunk away/defeated. I stood at the head of the table, no longer an interim CEO. I was just the CEO. The company was mine, not by theft, but by merit. That evening, I didn't stay late at the office. I went home to my quiet apartment. I logged into my personal bank account and made a transfer. It was an anonymous donation of several $1,000,000 to my old state university endowed to create a new scholarship fund, the Second Chance Scholarship, for students who had to work their way through school without family support. As I hit confirm, a feeling washed over me. It wasn't the cold satisfaction of revenge or the thrill of a corporate victory. It was warm. It felt like peace. I hadn't just reclaimed my stolen future. I had built a new 1/1 that was entirely my own, and I was finally ready to start living in it. The silence in the CEO's office was a living thing. It was heavier than any sound, filled with the ghosts of the day's carnage. My victory felt like a suit of armor that was welded to my skin. It was protecting me, but it was also suffocating me. The singular goal that had driven me for 8 years, the burning star I had navigated by, had just been extinguished, and in its place there was a profound, echoing darkness. I spent the first night as CEO on the couch in the office. I didn't sleep. I watched the city lights blur into the dawn, feeling like a stranger in my own life. The revenge was complete. Ted Depp was pied. So why did I feel so hollow? It was supposed to feel like justice. It just felt finished. The next morning, the office was a minefield of hostile stares and whispered conversations that died the moment I walked by. To them, I wasn't a savior. I was a usurper. A corporate shark who had devoured their charismatic, beloved leader. Liam's cult of personality was strong, and I was the soulless monster who had killed their king. I called a meeting of the senior leadership team. They filed into the boardroom where I'd executed Liam, their faces ranging from nervous to openly mutinous. I stood at the head of the table, / the same spot from which I had passed judgment yesterday. "Good morning," I began, my voice crisp and devoid of warmth. "As you know, there has been a change in leadership. My name is Alara Foster, and I am the interim CEO of Innovatech." I let my gaze sweep across each of them. Let me be perfectly clear. This company was on a collision course with bankruptcy. My predecessor's focus on vanity projects and unsustainable growth has put every single one of your jobs at risk. I am not here to be your friend. I am here to save this company. I laid out my initial plan, a complete freeze on all non-essential spending, a top to bottom audit of every department, and the immediate cancellation of the disastrous Sphere project. A woman with fiery red hair and sharp, intelligent eyes, the head of engineering. According to the file I'd memorized last night, her name was Maya Spoke Up. Her voice was steady, challenging. The Sphere wasn't a vanity project, she said. It was the future of this company. It was innovative. I turned my attention to her. This was the first test. "Innovation without profitability is a hobby, Miss Vance," I countered coolly. And this company's hobby was about to cost it everything. "The hardware division is bleeding money. We will refocus our resources on our core software products, which are actually profitable. You can't just cut the heart out of the company and expect it to live." She shot back. "The heart of a company is not a single project," I replied, my voice dropping slightly. "It's its ability to survive, to pay its employees, to deliver value. Right now, my only priority is ensuring this company has a future. Anyone who is not on board with that mission can collect their severance on the way out. Are we clear?" Silence. Maya held my gaze for a long moment, a flicker of something. Not defeat / but perhaps grudging comprehension in her eyes before she gave a curt, almost imperceptible nod. The rest of the team just stared at their hands. I had established my authority, but I had won no allies. I was utterly alone at the top. The news of the takeover broke the next day. A gossipy tech blog ran a story with the headline, "Innovatech's visionary CEO ousted in brutal boardroom coup led by his own sister." The article painted Liam as a tragic hero, a brilliant founder betrayed by a heartless corporate vulture. He had clearly given them an interview filled with self-pitying quotes about family and betrayal. He called me devoid of passion, a soulless numbers cruncher. He conveniently left out the part about the stolen college fund. My phone buzzed with notifications. I was being vilified on social media. Strangers were calling me a monster, a psychopath. The old me, the girl who just wanted to go to Georgetown, would have been devastated. But the woman I had become simply read the comments with a detached curiosity, as if they were about someone else. Let them talk. Their opinions couldn't touch me. The real confrontation came 2 days later. I was in a tense meeting with the finance department, dissecting the fraudulent accounting Liam had used to hide his losses, when my assistant's voice came over the intercom, tight with panic. "Miss Foster, your parents are in the lobby. They're demanding to see you." I closed my eyes for a fraction of a second, of course. The phone call wasn't enough for them. They needed a public spectacle. "Tell them I'm in a meeting," I said. I did, she replied. They said they'll wait. They're making a scene. I excused myself from the meeting and took the elevator down. The moment the doors opened, I could hear my mother's raised voice. She was standing in the middle of the gleaming lobby / my father beside her, looking like a thundercloud. A small crowd of employees had gathered to watch. I am his mother. She was shouting at the security guard, "This is my son's company. We have every right to be here." Then she saw me, her face contorted with theatrical grief. "Alara, there you are. Tell this man to let us up. We need to talk to you about what you've done to your brother." I walked toward them, my heels clicking on the marble floor. My face was a placid mask. I stopped a few feet away. "You were told not to contact me?" I sighed, my voice dangerously quiet. "Don't you use that tone with me, young lady." My father boomed, stepping forward. "You have humiliated this family. You have destroyed your brother. We came here to demand you fix this." "There is nothing to fix," I said. "A business decision was made. Now you are trespassing in a private office building and causing a disturbance. I'm asking you one time to leave." My mother began to sob, low, dramatic tears. "After everything we did for you, we gave you a roof over your head. We loved you." "You loved the idea of me?" I sighed, the truth of it landing with a cold thud in my own chest. "Until your son had a more expensive idea. You made your choice a long time ago. This is the consequence." I turned to the head of security. "Please escort Mr. and Mrs. Foster from the premises." The guards moved forward hesitantly. My father's face turned purple with rage. "You wouldn't dare," I said. And in my eyes, he finally saw it, not his daughter, not the little girl he had dismissed. He saw a stranger, a woman with a spine of ice, and he took a step back. They allowed themselves to be escorted out / shouting threats and insults over their shoulders. The lobby fell silent, the employees staring at me with a new kind of fear. I turned without a word and got back in the elevator. As the doors closed, I caught my reflection in the polished steel. Liam was right. I was a monster. But they had been the ones who created me. The next 6 months were a grueling war of attrition. I worked 18-hour days, fueled by caffeine and a cold, simmering rage. I dove into the guts of Innovatech, tearing it down to its studs. I laid off nearly a third of the workforce, a brutal but necessary measure to stop the financial bleeding. Each termination interview was a small piece of my soul turning to stone. I negotiated with banks, restructured debt, and killed off failing product lines. Slowly, painstakingly, I began to turn the ship around. In the process, I started to see what Liam had been too blind to appreciate. Beneath the bloat and the vanity, the core technology of Innovatech was brilliant. The original code, the central concept, was revolutionary. He'd had a winning lottery ticket and had tried to cash it in at a pawn shop.